We are watching former President Trump speaking at Trump Tower in New York City after attending a hearing over his appeal for a new trial in the E. Jean Carroll sexual abuse civil case. Trump called the case a long and complicated web, blaming the Justice Department, President Biden, and Vice President Harris. He also talked about the economy, calling today's job numbers terrible. We have full team coverage, and I want to go straight to our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky, who's there outside the appeals court. Because, Aaron, we just heard Trump, by my count, at least 3 times say he doesn't even know E. Jean Carroll and that her story is a lie. But he has already lost in court for doing that very thing, for denying her story, because the jury found him liable for that assault and for defaming her in the past by denying it. So could he have just subjected himself to another defamation case here?
I mean, it's certainly possible if E. Jean Carroll and her attorney were listening, Diane. The former president certainly came close to the line, if not went over it, and repeating the very defamation of E. Jean Carroll, for which he was held liable and ordered to pay $5 million, and that he's now appealing. So there's no small amount of irony that on the day he's appealing the outcome of the defamation case by E. Jean Carroll, he's repeating some of the very same words that the jury found were defamatory. So it is a bit of a risk for him. We don't know whether E. Jean Carroll would pursue another case, but if she's listening in, I think her ears might perk up.
Brian, what does this do? I want to bring in our legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer. What does this do for this case at the appeals court? Are these two things separate in terms of new comments? And how likely is it that Carroll could try to take him to court again, being she already has won against him multiple times, not only because of the original case, but because he continued to talk about it, continued to deny it?
Yeah, so short answer, it should not affect the appeal, because the appeal should be focused on the issues that occurred in that trial, but judges are human. If you're looking at this as a Second Circuit judge, and you said, we just had oral arguments about this, we just talked about this issue, you're getting more fines as they accrue over time, and then you have this hearing immediately after you do this, like, that can weigh on any human's mind who's probably looking at this from a negative perspective. And so it shouldn't legally, but it might. In terms of more defamation lawsuits, absolutely possible. He said the words, but a big part of defamation is also damages. E. Jean Carroll would have to come forward and say, after all of what happened, and for whatever reason, these specific statements damage her in one way, shape, or form. I can't imagine what those damages would be. That would be an argument for her, but I think that would be something that Donald Trump would push back on. Yes, you're potentially making false statements is what he would argue, but what are the damages at this point of him saying in this presser, I didn't know her, this never happened? That would be an issue for litigation.
Yeah, and let's go to our executive editorial producer, John Santucci, because, John, you can't ignore the timing here. It's 4 days until the debate, just 60 days until Election Day. He didn't have to be in court today. He doesn't have to be there at Trump Tower holding this press conference. Why does he go to these hearings that he doesn't have to attend? And why go through so much detail in this press conference that could potentially put him in more legal trouble when he doesn't have to be there at all?
I mean, you have to scratch your head a little bit, because you would think right now, if you're 4 days from a debate, you'd be doing, gee, I don't know, debate prep. But I suppose this is maybe a better usage of time. It's rather perplexing what exactly is going on right now, because this is a case based on the facts of the case that I can tell you, and most of our colleagues that cover Donald Trump and his team will tell you, the Trump team has wanted to run away from this case more than anything else. It is not a good storyline talking about an incident at Bergdorf Goodman's allegedly assaulting a woman, just something that the Trump team has known for a while. This was one, just run from it. It does nothing good for us. So to go through the whole narrative, remind voters, frankly, of how this began with Donald Trump going to this courthouse when, again, as you noted, he didn't have to today, he didn't have to then when the case was going on. It just brings the campaign, if you will, to a darker moment that they frankly thought they had gotten through. To your question of why he does this, it's the same reason why during early proceedings in the New York Attorney General's case, the Manhattan DA's case before it was in trial, the Florida case, the DC case, he goes because he has believed repeatedly that the cases help him politically. Not good personally, certainly not good financially, between the fine that came out in the E. Jean Carroll case and the New York Attorney General's case, $500 million between the two when you do the math. But he somehow has this fixation that while I'm in court, the voters, the diehard supporters, the people that he spoke about years ago, that I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose a supporter, Diane, he believes that that will motivate his voters to go to the polls. And look at what he said at the top of his remarks, right? That these were cases and charges brought by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Let's repeat yet again, all of these probes began well before Donald Trump was out of office, and especially in the New York probes. E. Jean Carroll started looking into suing him for defamation many, many months and years before all this, based on the comments he had made.
And Brian, he didn't just mention E. Jean Carroll. He also went out of his way to mention by name some other women who have accused him of unwanted sexual advances. Does that open him up to potential defamation lawsuits from those women now?
Absolutely, and I think you commented on this because I'm looking at him going through his notes, and the page looks pretty small. I was like, does he just have the names of these people and are just rattling them off? It's not just saying it, it's how he's going about it. It looks like he's making directed attacks at these people, but again, it comes back to the damages. And so if the women can say, I heard the statement, it was made, it was false, and it damaged me in A, B, C type of way, then yeah, that's defamation. But of course, I think the major pushback here from Donald Trump and his attorneys would be, what are the damages? We've already gone through this litigation. Your name's been out there. He might have said a false statement, but what are the damages? I think that would be the larger issue at play.
Can I make one other point? Because something you and I were talking about while we were watching this, about the notes that were going on. You had asked me, if those legal notes or whatnot. Those are his notes. Let's be clear. His attorneys don't want him doing this, Diane.
All right. Aaron Katursky, Brian Buckmeyer, John Santucci, thank you all.